Welcome. This is Unit 7 of the Georgia Department of Education Pupil Transportation Model Training Units. The subject of this unit is going to be pre-trip inspection and security awareness checks. Our objectives for this unit are to teach the driver how to identify symptoms of possible trouble, how to identify interior and exterior maintenance tasks, how to perform a systematic pre-trip inspection of the school bus, and how to look for any changes to the bus or surrounding area while conducting a security awareness check. As our performance standards, the trainee will be able to detect symptoms of mechanical problems by performing a systematic vehicle inspection. As an overview, you're going to learn why you need to inspect the bus, when to inspect the bus, how to inspect the bus, how to use the pre-trip inspection form, how to report inspection findings, and when and how corrective action should be taken. Let's talk about why you inspect the bus. Safety is the most important reason you inspect the vehicle. Safety for yourself, your passengers, and other road users. Vehicle inspection can save lives, property, and downtime. A vehicle defect found during an inspection could save you problems later. You could have a breakdown on the road that will cost time and money, or even worse, a crash caused by a defect. You will be able to determine if the bus is safe and ready to use by checking for anything unusual or out of place during the Homeland Security Awareness Sweep. And finally, it is important to remember that as a CDL holder, you are mandated to inspect your vehicle by federal and state authorities. When do you inspect the bus? You inspect the bus each day before the morning and afternoon routes or any time after the bus goes out of service. We will discuss how to do the inspection at a later time in the program. Anytime the bus goes out of service, for example a field trip, you would need to do another pre-trip. If you took a group to a football game after your afternoon route, you would perform a pre-trip before you bring the team back from the game. Homeland Security requires us to check the bus once an hour for tampering or vandalism. To prevent accidental rolling, pump your service brakes down to 20 to 40 psi during the layover. While driving the bus, you should watch gauges for safety and signs of trouble. Use your senses to check for problems. Look, listen, smell, feel. The transmission shouldn't be making unusual noise. It should have a smooth response to the accelerator, should not be skipping, and there shouldn't be any metallic grinding sound. The engine, be alert to unusual noise, vibrations, or the lack of a normal response. Never race a cold engine. Check the speedometer and tachometer. Make sure they register correctly. Look at your steering. Is it responsive? Is there too much play or jerking? Is the power steering quiet? And for suspension, look for sagging or excessive bounce or bottoming out going over bumps, excessive swaying when turning or cornering. Report any unusual ride or handling characteristics. The cause could be faulty shock absorbers or broken springs. When you stop, you're going to check critical items such as the tires, wheels and rims, brakes, lights and reflectors, and the parking brake, make sure it does hold. Anything you notice out of the ordinary should be reported. It is better to report any unusual condition and have it checked than not to report it and have a very costly or even dangerous defect. Always do a post-trip inspection and report at the end of the day on each vehicle you drove. And we're going to talk more about post-trip inspections in the next unit, Unit 8. Okay, a quick review question. Why do you inspect the bus? The answer would be to save lives, property and downtime, decrease maintenance costs because of Homeland Security awareness checks, reduce the potential for breakdowns, determine the vehicle's readiness for use, and again, remember, it's mandated by law. When do you inspect the bus? You need to check the bus every morning and every afternoon before each route, including any time the bus goes out of service, i.e., while at a football game, pre-trip before the return trip. If you drive a midday or community trip, pre-trip the bus before putting the bus back in service. You would also check the bus during the trip, watch for gauges for signs of trouble, check the transmission operation, the engine, steering, and suspension and brakes. Remember, use your senses. Look, listen, smell, touch. If you're stopped and able to get out of the bus, check critical items such as tires, wheels and rims, brakes, lights, and reflectors. Anything you notice out of the ordinary should be reported. It's better to report any unusual condition and have it checked than to not report it and have a very costly and even dangerous defect. Always do a post-trip inspection and report at the end of the day on each vehicle you drove. Okay, so how do you inspect the bus? You will use a systematic approach to include the approach of the bus, the walk-around, engine compartment, inside the bus, lighting systems, special needs items such as lifts, car seats, brake checks, and of course documentation is a part of that pre-trip. The driver is not expected to be a mechanic, but by using a prepared checklist of items to check, the driver can determine the vehicle's readiness for use. Follow your system's set pattern of procedure used to maintain consistency. Okay, so let's start with step number 1, which is the approach. As we approach the bus, look for any changes to the bus or surroundings from the post-trip inspection when you last drove the bus. Has there been any vandalism, damage, or graffiti? Signs of vandalism could be debris on the ground, flat tires, or open doors or hoods. A thorough security awareness sweep of the exterior of the bus should be performed prior to entering the bus. We have all been trained on the School Bus Watch program. We must always be aware of our surroundings. The asterisk indicates security awareness check items that may require closer examination during your vehicle's inspection. You will check for any fluid leaks on the ground under the bus. Leaks may come from the engine, transmission, fuel tank, differential, or wheels. Green fluid is antifreeze, pink could be power steering, brown and thick could be an oil leak. Check the bumper and crossing gate area for hidden objects as part of the security awareness sweep. They should be secure with no hanging objects or loose wires. And all bus windows and glass should be clean and not cracked, free of illegal stickers. Windshield wipers should have good rubber and touch the glass. Mirrors should be mounted securely with no broken or cracked glass. They should be clean, properly aimed, and tightly adjusted. On your walk-around, beginning at the front door side, continue down the right side and underneath the bus, the rear and down the left side, that is the driver's side of the bus, and up to the front. Use a flashlight when needed. Check the vehicle inspection items and security awareness sweep. The front passenger door is unlocked, damaged, and you note anything unusual. The fuel door area, open it with a key, make sure that the cap is secure, make sure the fuel tank and the cage is secure, that there are no leaks or anything unusual. Check the reflectors, reflective tape, and emergency exit decals are intact and not damaged. Underneath the bus, sight check only. The exhaust system, check it for sagging exhaust pipes, tailpipes, and mufflers. Look for visible exhaust and soot. Listen for excessive exhaust noise, vibration, and rattles. The drive shaft should not be damaged. Couplings need to be secure and free of foreign objects. U-hangers need to be secure and not damaged. Make sure that the frame is not damaged and nothing is unusual or attached to or under the bus. External storage compartment, if your bus is so equipped, make sure that it has nothing unusual present. And for wheelchair lifts, if so equipped, make sure that the doors open and close and latch properly. Make sure the lights work and nothing is unusual found. Continuing with the walk-around, check the rear suspension system. Sight check it. Does one end of the bus sag? Make sure that the frame is not damaged, that the spring hangers are secure, leaf springs are not shifted or broken, that the axle, shocks, and mounts are not broken or leaking. Rear wheels and wells, make sure that there's no excessive corrosion, cracks, or other damage. Make sure that the rims are not damaged and have no welding repairs, that the lock rings are secure, the lug nuts are tight and not missing. Make sure the spacers, if they're equipped, are not bent, damaged, or rusted through. Axle seals should not be leaking. Look carefully at the inner wheels and tires for evidence of wetness and check outside the center axle seal. On the rear dual tires, make sure they're properly inflated, not worn excessively, at least 2 30-seconds minimum tread depth. Make sure that there's no damage or defects, that the valve stem and cap are present and not leaking. Make sure that there's nothing between the tires or the spacers. On rear brakes, sight check the chambers for damage. Air hoses are secure on both ends, pliable and not leaking. Manual slack adjusters, brake rods should not move more than 1 inch when pulled by hand. The brake drums, check for cracks, dents, holes, missing or loose bolts. The brake linings, where visible, should not be worn dangerously thin or soaked with oil. The emergency exit doors at the back of the bus, make sure that the hinges are not damaged and will open or close and latch properly from the outside. Make sure that the glass is not broken and the seals around the windows are tight. Make sure that the warning buzzer works. The license plate, make sure that it's current and not damaged. The tag light is present and in good condition. At the rear of the bus, shine a flashlight through the emergency door and under seats to look for anything unusual. Look underneath the back of the bus for leaks and anything unusual. Make sure that the tailpipe is not crimped shut and not clogged and does extend past the edge of the bus. As you continue up the left side, make sure that all lights and reflectors and lens covers are clean, secure, not broken, and are the proper color. Amber in the front or rear axle and red behind the rear axle. Check all lights and reflectors and lens covers on the left side and the front of the bus just as you did on the right side and the rear of the bus. Continuing down the left side of the bus and the left side, rear suspension, rear dual wheels, rear tires, and rear brakes just as you did on the right side. Check the reflectors, reflective tape, and emergency exit decals are intact and not damaged. Replace if necessary. Check the battery box, which may be located in different areas on different buses. Make sure the battery is secure, connections are tight, and the cell caps are present. Battery connections should not show signs of excessive corrosion. Make sure that the door locks, that there are no protruding wires or unusual items found in the battery box. School bus stop arms, make sure that they're secure, that they open and close easily, that there's no loose wires or nothing unusual. And the front wheels and wells, no excessive corrosion, cracks, or other damage. Make sure that the rims are not damaged and have no welding repairs. Make sure the lug nuts are tight and not missing. Hub oil seals are not leaking. Check the glass on all windows should be free of illegal stickers, clean and not cracked. Windshield wipers should have good contact with the glass. Mirrors should be mounted securely with no broken or cracked glass. They should be clean, properly aimed, and tightly adjusted. What would you check when doing a walk-around inspection? Now, we've covered a lot of material, so let's take the time now to review the walk-around. You begin at the front door side and continue down the right side and underneath the bus, the rear and down the left side of the driver's side, and then back up to the front. Use a flashlight when needed. Check vehicle inspection items and security awareness sweep to include the front passenger door area, the fuel door area, tank, and cage. Make sure it's secure, no leaks or anything unusual. Check the reflectors, reflective tape, and emergency exit decals are intact and not damaged. Check underneath the bus on the door side. Sight check the exhaust system for sagging exhaust pipes, tailpipe, or muffler. Look for visible exhaust or soot. Make sure that the frame is not damaged and nothing is unusual is attached to or under the bus. Make sure the drive shaft couplings are secure and free of foreign objects. Make sure that the U-hangers are secure. For external storage compartments, make sure that they're latched properly. And make sure that the wheelchair lift, if it's equipped, closes and latches properly, and that the lights work and there is nothing unusual. Check the rear suspension, including the frame, spring hangers, leaf springs, that they're not shifted or broken. Check the axles, the shocks, and the mounts for damage or leaks. Check the rear wheels and wells. Wheels show no excessive corrosion, cracks, or other damage. Rims have no welding repairs. Make sure that the lock rings are secure, the lug nuts are tight, the spacers, if they're equipped, are not bent, damaged, or rusted through. Look careful at the inner wheels for evidence of wetness, and check the outside center axle seal for leaks. Check the rear dual tires for proper inflation. Make sure that the wear minimum tread of 2 seconds. Make sure that there's no damage to the sidewalls, that the valve is intact and not leaking. Check the rear brake systems. Air hoses are pliable and not leaking, that the chambers are secure, slack adjusters, push rod does not move more than 1 inch when pulled by hand. Make sure that the emergency exit doors open and close and latch properly, and that the glass is intact. Make sure that the license plate is secure and clean. The light works. Check underneath the rear of the bus, nothing stuck between the tires or spaces. Shine a flashlight through the emergency door and under the seats looking for anything unusual. Make sure that the tailpipe is not bent or obstructed. Okay, are you seeing how easy the procedure is to remember by grouping? Picture that you have a paintbrush and a can of pink paint. When you finish with the pre-trip, everything will now be pink. So now let's continue. Lights and lenses and reflectors are clean, secure, not broken. Amber in the front of the rear axle and red behind the rear axle. Check the battery box, which may be located in different areas on different buses. Make sure that the battery is secure, connections are tight, and cell caps are present. Battery connections should not show signs of excessive corrosion. Make sure the door locks and no protruding wires or unusual items are found. Check the school bus stop arms. Make sure that they're clean, secure, open and close easily, and no loose wires or nothing is unusual. Check the front wheels and wells for no excessive corrosion, cracks, or other damage. Make sure that the rims are not damaged and have no welding repairs. Check the lug nuts to make sure that they're tight and not missing, and the hub oil seals are not leaking. On the front tires, make sure that they're properly inflated, not worn excessively. They have to be at least 4 seconds minimum tread depth. Make sure that there's no damage or defects. Make sure that the valve stem and cap are present and not leaking. Recapped or regrooved tires are prohibited on the front wheels. And note, it is easier to check the steering system, front suspension systems, and front brake systems with the hood open while checking the engine compartment. You may choose to do differently. Okay, so now we are going to check the engine compartment under the hood. Open the hood. Lift from the side and bend with your knees. Push the hood up slowly to prevent a back injury. Inspect the entire compartment top to bottom. Check for the following and continue security awareness sweep. First, do you notice anything out of the ordinary? Now, check for excessive oil or grease deposits. Check for fluid levels. Engine oil must be done as the oil is warm. Check the transmission fluid, which should be done when the fluid is cold. Power steering and power brake fluid if applicable. Pull out the dipstick, wipe them clean, insert, and remove and check the fluid levels. Add fluids as needed. Make sure that the coolant reservoir fluid level is sufficient and the cap is secure. Windshield washer solvent is full, and check that for leaks also. Check the water pump, power steering pump, and power steering hose. Make sure that they're mounted securely with no leaks. Hoses shouldn't be cracked or leaking, and the clamps must be secure. Check the wiring harnesses. Look where the wiring insulation may be rubbing through because of engine vibration. Make sure that all clamps are secure. Check all belts. Check by twisting, turning, and looking for cracks or fraying. Check for looseness. There should be no more than 3/4 inch play in the belts. Check all hoses by twisting, turning, pinching, squeezing, feeling, and looking. And check for the contacts with other parts, chipping and cracking, including the radiator, heater, and compressor vacuum pump hoses. Continuing in the engine compartment, check your air compressor and alternator to make sure that they're secure and not damaged and there's no loose wires. Check your steering system. The power steering hose secure and is not leaking. The steering column, gearbox, and all the other linkage, and the tie rod from the left tire to the right tire and the steering axle are all secure, and make sure that there's no signs of leakage. For the front suspension, sight check the frame, the leaf springs, make sure that they're not shifted, cracked, or broken. Check the spring hangers and shackles are secure. Make sure that the axle mounts are not broken or loose. The shock absorbers should not be broken or leaking and secure at both ends. The front brakes, Sight check the chambers for damage. Air hoses are secure on both ends and there is no audible leaking. Manual slack adjuster, the brake rod should not move more than 1 inch when pulled by hand. With the brake drums, check for cracks, dents, or holes, missing or loose bolts. For the brake linings, where they're visible, they should not be worn dangerously thin or soaked with oil. Check the right front suspension, including the frame, leaf springs, axle mounts, hangers, shackle, and shock absorbers, just as you did on the left side. And check the right front brake systems, just as you did on the left side. Okay, question. What would you check in the engine compartment? Okay, check for excessive oil or grease deposits. Check the fluid levels to include engine, transmission, coolant, power steering, power brakes, and washer fluids. Check the water pump and the power steering pumps. Check your wiring harnesses, wires, and clamps, and check for wiring insulation. Check all the belts and hoses for the power steering, radiator, heater, compressor, and the vacuum pumps. Check your air compressor and the alternator. Check your steering system, the steering column, gearbox, all the linkage, tie rod, and steering axle. Check your front suspension systems, the frame, leaf springs, axle mounts, spring hangers, shackles, and shock absorbers. Front brake systems, your air hose, brake chamber, slack adjuster, and brake rod, and also your brake drums. Check those for cracks, dents, or holes, missing or loose bolts. And your brake linings, where visible, should not be worn dangerously thin. Check the right side suspension system and the brake systems, just as you did on the left. The fourth topic of our systematic inspection is inside the bus. Use a flashlight when needed, and we will start with the passenger entry. Unlock the door if it's locked. Door should move freely and the door control works. No broken glass or damaged seals. Look for anything unusual before entering the bus. Make sure that the handrail is secure, steps are not obstructed, and the treads are secure. Make sure the stairwell light is not broken. Make sure there's nothing out of the ordinary found in the driver's seat area or console area. The driver's seat belt is intact, not frayed or cut, and operates smoothly. Look for unusual objects in or near a trash container, radio speakers, bulkhead compartment, glove box, first aid kit, cleanup kit, the PA speakers, emergency reflective triangles, and box. Remember to check your mandated emergency equipment on a school bus. That includes your fire extinguisher. Make sure it shows no sign of tampering and is fully charged. Your first aid kit and body fluid spill kit are fully stocked and secured to the bus. Make sure you have your 3 emergency reflective triangles are all present and the box is secured to the bus, and make sure that you have spare fuses if not equipped with circuit breakers. Continuing inside the bus, check above and behind the interior passenger rear view mirror. Make sure the passenger seats are secured to the frame and the frame is secured to the floor. Look on, under, and between passenger seats and behind the rear seats for anything unusual. Unlock the rear emergency exit door if it's locked. An inner lock will prevent the bus from starting if the emergency door is locked. Make sure that the aisle is clear and not obstructed. Make sure emergency exit doors, windows, and hatches are all able to open and close freely. Doors should latch properly from inside and outside the bus. Make sure that warning alarms work, that handles are not broken, seals are tight, and make sure that you know how to operate all emergency exits and instruct your passengers how to operate for evacuation. The roof hatches should be in a latched position. Look for anything out of the ordinary. Mirrors. It is your responsibility to properly adjust all the mirrors. The flat, convex, crossovers, and rear view interior mirrors should be done in according to Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standards 111. Mirrors must be securely mounted and clean. They can vibrate out of adjustment. Check your windshield to make sure that it's clear and clean inside and outside. It is essential that the driver's vision is not impaired by dirt or film on the glass. Never place decorations or any other on any emergency window, door, or the windshield. There should not be any illegal stickers, even if they are transparent. Make sure that your horn works. Make sure that the gear lever moves freely. Remember that the bus will only start in neutral. Make sure your steering play on a non-power steering bus. Check for excessive play, turning the steering wheel back and forth. Play should not exceed 10 degrees, which is about 2 inches on the 20-inch steering wheel. Steering wheel play for power steering equipped buses is checked from inside the bus with the engine running. Steering play should not exceed 10 degrees, which is about 2 inches on a 20-inch steering wheel, before the front left wheels barely moves. And check with that while looking at the crossover mirrors. Okay, as we continue inspecting inside the bus, let's start the engine. Before you start the engine, make sure the glow plugs, also known as the wait to start light, goes off before attempting to crank. In colder weather, you may need to turn the glow plugs on and off several times before you crank. Anti-lock braking system. ABS yellow malfunction lamps on the instrument panel let you know if something is not working. On newer vehicles, the malfunction lamp comes on at the startup for a bulb check and then goes off quickly. On older vehicles, the lamp could stay on until you are driving over 5 miles an hour. If the lamp stays on after the bulb check or goes on once you are underway, you may have lost ABS control in one or more wheels. Remember, if your ABS malfunctions, you still have your regular brakes. You just don't have the computerized system that keeps your wheels from locking up during hard braking applications. So, you may continue to drive normally, but do get the system serviced as soon as you can. Continuing on with your panel, the service brake low air warning light should come on when the air pressure goes down to about 60 psi. Pull off the road to a safe location and call for assistance if that happens while you're on the road. Do not drive the bus unless you have at least 100 to 125 psi. A service brake warning light may come on during a hard braking application. It could indicate that at least one of the brake systems in a dual system is not operating properly. Do not continue driving the bus until it's checked by a mechanic. Oil pressure warning lights may go on as the bus is being started, but it should go off after the engine starts. If it does not, the engine should be turned off and reported to a mechanic immediately. The alternating warning light. If this light remains on after the engine is running, it indicates a malfunction in the charging system. Report the condition at once. Temperature gauge warning lights indicate that the temperature of the coolant indicate what the temperature of the coolant is in the engine. Your bus may have a gauge or a warning light. The indicator should read cool or warm. If it indicates hot, the engine should be stopped immediately and the problem reported. And finally, the fuel gauge should indicate a safe margin of fuel for the day's operation. Every effort should be made not to let the engine read less than a quarter of the tank of fuel. Homeland Security recommends 1/2 of a tank, as we may be first responders in an emergency. Continuing inside, as you're sitting in the driver's seat, now you've started the engine and we're going to check the control panel. The control panel for most buses is immediately to the left of the driver as they're sitting in their seat. The following should be checked for proper operations and adjustments or conditions. The heaters and the defrosters and the fan should all operate properly. Aim your windshield fans toward the windshield to assist in removing condensation. Use your roof vents to clear condensation also. Panel lights should be on and adjusted for brightness. Wipers and washers, make sure that they operate properly. Make sure your master switch and pilot lamps are operational. If equipped, these lamps indicate your amber loading lights, red loading lights, and strobe light have been activated. And don't forget your dash lights. You need to be able to read all your gauges and the speedometer and the tachometer. The lights should be in good condition. Record any malfunction on your pre-trip form and have it repaired. Live communication, as required by law, should be operational and on correct channel with the volume up when the bus is in service. Be careful when using this equipment. Never be distracted while loading or unloading students on the campus or at a bus stop. Check for your insurance card, emergency numbers, and procedures. They should also be on your bus in the event of an accident. And make sure you know what to do. Have a plan in case of an emergency. The best safety equipment on the bus is the driver. An attitude check is the most important thing to check before beginning your trip. Leave your problems outside the bus. You can pick them up after you've completed the trip and park the bus. What are some of the items on the bus that you would check inside the bus? Check the passenger entry door to include the handrail, steps, treads, and step wheel light. Check the driver's seat and the console area. Do a security awareness check prior to entering the bus. Use a flashlight if need be. Inspect the mandated emergency equipment for school buses. That includes the fire extinguisher, first aid kit, body fluid cleanup kit, emergency reflective triangles, and spare fuses if not equipped with circuit breakers. Continuing on with things that you would be checking inside the bus, check the passenger seats for graffiti, rips, and tears. Make sure that the seats should be secured in the frame. Make sure that the aisle is clear and unobstructed. Make sure that the emergency exit doors, windows, latch, and hatches all open smoothly and latch properly. Make sure that those alarms work and that the handles are not broken. Make sure that the door can be opened from the inside as well as from the outside. Check that the mirrors, they are an important part of the pre-trip inspection. It's your responsibility to adjust according to Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standard 111. They should be checked to be sure that they give the view required for safety. They can vibrate out of adjustment. And check the windshield, horn, and gear lever, and check steering wheel play. What are some of the items that are checked inside the bus during the engine start? Make sure that all your gauges are working. So it's the air pressure gauge, fuel, the voltmeter, the oil pressure gauge, and your temperature gauge. Make sure that your warning lights for the ABS malfunction lamp, the low air warning, the oil pressure warning, alternator, temperature warning, and if you're so equipped, check your light monitors as well. Make sure all of that is working. For your control panel, again, for most people, this is off to the left. Make sure your heaters, defrosters, and windshield fans all work. Make sure that your windshield wipers and washer works. Check your panel lights, your master switch, and the pilot lights. Make sure your live communication system is working. Make sure you have your insurance card, emergency numbers, and procedures in place. And finally, do an attitude check. Again, leave your problems outside the bus. You can pick those up when you're done with your route. All right, continuing with our pre-trip, after you've started the bus, now we're going to check the lighting systems. All lights and lighting indicators should be checked for proper operation, adjustment, and color on the front, rear, and sides of the bus. They can be wiped clean during your walk-around. They should turn on when the appropriate control is turned on. We're checking directional signals, hazard lights, interior lights, dome lights. The headlights should be checked on low beam and high beam. Make sure that the running lights are clean. Make sure that your brake lights are clean and light up when the brake pedal is depressed. Make sure your clearance lights and marker lights are the proper color, yellow to the front of the rear axle and red behind the rear axle. Anytime the driver leaves the driver's seat to check items, the bus transmission must be in neutral and the parking brake must be set. This is for your safety. Looking at the lighting systems and the special equipment. These lights and special equipment are provided as safety features to protect students while loading or unloading on the highway. The loading lights are activated by the driver with a manual switch which first activates the amber warning lights on the front and the rear of the bus. They flash alternately and can be checked standing in your stairwell or sometimes with crossover mirrors. Note, however, that your crossover mirror should be adjusted for traffic and for students, not just to see your amber lights. The red stoplights come on when the service door is opened after the amber warning lights have been first activated and the bus is now at a full stop. These lights are located on the top, front, and rear of the bus, and they also flash alternately. Note that it is illegal to move the bus with the red lights and the stop arm extended. Special safety equipment includes the stop arms or the stop signs, the crossing gate, and the strobe light. The stop arms or the stop signs also activate along with the red stop lights when the service door is opened, and the red lights on the sign should also be flashing and clean. The stop sign should be fully extended. The crossing gate, which is mounted on the front bumper, also activates along with the red stop lights when the service door is opened. It should extend straight out when activated and return to the bumper when closed. The strobe light, if automatic, will also activate when the loading lights are activated. For the strobe control to work automatically, it must be in the off position on the panel. You would only turn it on to override for weather or special safety situations. All loading lights, stop arms, crossing gate, and strobe should be deactivated when the service door is closed. Make sure that they have retracted before moving the bus. Anytime the driver leaves the driver's seat to check these items, the bus transmission must be in neutral and the parking brake set. Okay, questions here. What do you check in the lighting systems? Check your directional signals, your hazard lights, your interior lights, headlights and running lights, brake lights, clearance and marker lights. Check your loading lights, so both the amber and the red loading lights, as well as the equipment that is activated along with the red lights, which are the stop arms or the stop sign, the crossing gate out in front of the bus, and the strobe light. Okay, at this point in your pre-trip, if you have a special needs bus, this is the time when you would take to check your special equipment. So let's take a look at that. If you drive a bus equipped with a wheelchair lift, pay special attention to the compartment for anything out of the ordinary. The lift door should operate smoothly and latch securely. Make sure all the special equipment needed before you take the bus is on the bus. The wheelchair lift, if applicable, should operate smoothly. Make sure no cables are caught when folding in the lift. Wheelchair securement straps should be neatly stored to prevent damage to tie downs as well as to the passengers and their wheelchair. Passenger seat belts should not be frayed and latches not damaged. Safety vests should be checked for cleanliness and condition. Child safety seats should be checked for cracks in the shell. Internal harnesses should not be twisted or frayed, and the covers should be clean and sanitized. Follow the Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standard and best practice for installing safety seats in the school bus. The child safety seats should be fastened to the seat frame with seat belts installed and attached to the bus frame seat, and make sure that they bite into the seat. The seat should be secured tightly to the bus seat with only about 1 inch of play. Make sure you have a strap cutter. There should be at least 2 cutters on board and located in a designated spot easily accessible to the driver but out of reach of the children. There should be a fire blanket stored in a storage pouch, and there should be underhood fire extinguisher in good condition in the newer buses. Looking at some questions on special needs. What are some of the items that you'll need to check if you drive a special needs bus or a lift bus? You'll check the wheelchair lift area, wheelchair securement straps, passenger seat belts, safety vests, and child safety seats, strap cutters, fire blanket, storage pouch, and under the hood fire extinguisher. Okay, the final thing to be checked before you do your documentation and roll out on the road are the brakes. The brakes cannot be either air brakes or hydraulic brakes. So let's talk about the brake checks first for air brakes. If they're equipped with air brakes, check the anti-lock braking system and indicator lights. The lights should come on and then turn off. If you have air brakes and you pump down as part of your post-trip inspection, check the brake system as you build up the pressure. Check the rate of air pressure buildup. When the engine is at operating RPMs, the pressure should build from 85 to 100 psi within 45 seconds in a dual air system. If the air pressure does not build up fast enough, your pressure may drop too low during driving and require an emergency stop. So don't drive the bus until you get that problem fixed. When spring brakes are on at the post-trip, the bus should not move when you start the bus. The low air warning buzzer will sound until the air pressure reaches about 60 psi. With the engine running, build the pressure until the low air warning buzzer and light go off. Continue to build the pressure until the system is fully charged, which is around 100 to 125 psi. You can hear the cutout at about 125 psi. If you have air brakes and you do not pump down the brakes as part of your post-trip inspection, you will reverse this procedure by pumping down for each test. For the parking brake check, with the parking brake on, the engine running, place it in gear and accelerate lightly, and the bus should not move. With air leakage checks, start with a fully charged system, the engine off but ignition on and the brakes off. It should not lose more than 2 psi in 1 minute. Apply the service brake fully, and after the initial drops, you should not lose more than 3 psi in 1 minute. If you have a problem, report it to maintenance immediately. With the service brake checks, make sure you don't wait until you're out on the highway to check those brakes. Test them at a low speed, bringing the bus to a complete stop. Before leaving the transportation facility, drive the bus about 5 miles an hour. Apply the service brake firmly. The bus should stop in a straight line without skidding, swerving, or pulling to one side. The brakes should not grab or lock or make excessive noise. Report any excessive pressure pedal or abnormal or unusual braking behavior. If the condition prevents safe braking, do not operate the bus until the condition has been repaired. Check the air pressure gauge periodically as you're driving. It is important to know how your brakes work and how to check them for safety before beginning your trip. If any problem exists with the brake system, do not drive the bus. Federal and state laws forbid operating an unsafe vehicle. Okay, let's take a look at what you would check if you had hydraulic brakes. If equipped, check the anti-lock braking system indicator lights. Again, those lights should come on and then turn off. Pump the brake pedal 3 times, then apply firm pressure to the pedal and hold it for 5 seconds. The pedal should not move. If it does, there may be a leak or other problem. Get it fixed before driving. The parking brake, again, engage the transmission in a low gear, pull forward against the parking brake to make sure that parking brake holds. Service brake check, basically the same as with air brakes. Do not wait until you're out on the highway to check the brakes. Test them at a low speed, bringing the bus to a complete stop. Before you leave the transportation facility or your parking area, drive the bus to about 5 miles an hour. Apply the service brake firmly. The bus should stop in a straight line without skidding, swerving, or pulling to one side. The brake shouldn't grab or lock or make excessive noise, and report any of the excessive pedal pressure or abnormal or unusual braking behavior. If the condition prevents safe braking, do not operate the bus until the condition has been repaired. Check any gauges that you have on your brakes periodically. Depress the brake pedal with the engine off. Listen to ensure that the proper operation of the electrical backup system. Again, if there's any problems with the brakes, do not drive the bus. So our review questions. What brake checks must you perform as part of your pre-trip inspection with air brakes? Make sure that the spring/emergency brake is engaged and that the knob pops out. That should pop out automatically whenever the air pressure is down to 20 to 40 psi. Check your air pressure gauge. Make sure that the low air warning comes on at 60 to 80 psi. Make sure that your parking brake holds. Engage the transmission. Accelerate slightly. The bus should not move. And check your air leakage rate check. Turn the engine off, put the switch back in the on position. With your foot on the service brake, release the parking brake, and you should not lose more than 3 psi in 1 minute. For the service brake check, check before leaving the park location. Move your bus to about 5 miles an hour. Apply the service brake firmly. The bus should not pull left or right. What do you check when you do a pre-trip inspection with hydraulic brakes? With a service brake, pump the pedal 3 times and hold for 5 seconds. The pedal should not move. With the parking brake, have your foot on the service brake, engage the transmission, do not accelerate, but the bus should not move. With the engine off but the key in the on position, you should hear a humming sound which would indicate an electrical backup system is operational. Again, if you have any problems with the brakes, do not drive the bus. Okay, so now you've checked everything out, so now it's a matter of documentation. If you didn't write it down, For all intents and purposes, it never happened. Remember, federal and state laws require that drivers inspect the vehicles, and the way they would determine whether or not the vehicle has been inspected is to check the documentation. So the documentation is very important. Complete the pre-trip driver security awareness sweep report. It's a written report and typically a checklist. The report of the content shall identify the vehicle and list any defect or deficiency discovered. If no defect is found, the report should indicate that with check mark and initials in the various areas. Your school district will have a specific form to fill out, and as a part of your hands-on training with your over-the-road trainer, you'll see those forms and see how those are to be completed. Okay, so with inspection findings, any pre-trip findings must be reported before placing the bus in service. Fill out the required work order. You may be directed to take a spare bus. Include any safety hazards such as broken windows, vandalism, vulgarity, offensive markings displeasing to the general public. Include safety equipment such as the fire extinguisher, first aid kit, and body fluid kit, as well as the emergency reflective triangles. Check the brake lights, turn signals, special safety equipment for loading and unloading students, the amber and red loading lights, the stop arms and crossing gate, and the strobe light. The report content should identify the vehicle, should list any defect or deficiency which would affect safe operation of the vehicle or result in a mechanical breakdown. If the driver discovers no defect or deficiency, place a check mark and initial the report. Corrective action. Any defect or deficiency on a vehicle inspection report should be repaired by certified fleet maintenance personnel if likely to affect safety or the safe operation of the bus. Indicate a defect on the form with a 0. When repaired, place an X over the 0. Both the driver and the mechanic should initial the report. The report should be prepared for each vehicle operated and remain with the vehicle. Okay, so questions. Is it necessary to document your pre-trip inspection and security awareness sweep? Absolutely. Federal and state laws require the inspection and the written report. The Georgia Department of Education has guidelines for the length of the time required to archive these reports, and all of these reports should record the condition of the vehicle. What should you include in the written report? Vehicle identification, any defect or deficiency that would affect the safe operation of the vehicle or result in a mechanical breakdown. Report the findings before the AM or PM routes and prepare a work order if need be. Indicate with your initials and a check mark if no defect was found. How would you take corrective action? Corrective action is taken. The defect or deficiency on the report shall be repaired by a certified fleet maintenance personnel if it is likely to affect the safe operation of the bus. Report prepared for each vehicle operated. The report remains with the vehicle, and both the driver and mechanic should initial the report when a repair is made. Okay, let's summarize what all we've learned in this Unit 7 on pre-trip inspection. We've talked about why you inspect the bus, when you inspect the bus, how you inspect the bus, how to use the pre-trip inspection form, how to report and document findings on that form, and when you need to take corrective action. How do you apply the training? You will apply this training each time the vehicle is placed in service and during the trip. You will follow the guidelines presented in this program to conduct a systematic pre-trip inspection and security awareness check for symptoms related to mechanical problems and notice possible changes to the bus and its surroundings when conducting a security awareness check. Continuing with how to apply the training, you will document your findings on a written report, take corrective action when required in order to save lives, property, and downtime, decrease the maintenance costs, and determine the vehicle's readiness for use. Conclusion. We have concluded the pre-trip inspection in this classroom. We understand that if you hear, you're going to forget. If you see, you're more likely to remember. But if you do it, you understand. We've provided you with the tools and the knowledge to be proficient in conducting a complete pre-trip inspection and safety awareness check on the vehicle you drive, but we will give you some more hands-on experience to help you understand and get this down. You know why and when to inspect the vehicle. You know how to do it and what to inspect. You will see the form to record and document your inspection findings, and you know what to do to take corrective action to ensure that your bus is safe for your passengers and other motorists on the road. You will now work with a driver trainer on the bus out over the road. They're going to show you how to do all the things that we've talked about today. You will understand. We want to ensure that you are ready for being released to do a pre-trip on your own. Remember, paint the bus pink and you will have it done in a wink. A well-educated driver is a safe driver. A well-maintained bus is a safe bus. And finally, remember to put your brain in gear before you put the bus in gear, and don't forget to pre-trip your attitude. Thank you. Welcome to Unit 8 of the Georgia Department of Education School Bus Training Program. This one is on post-trip inspection. Just as it requires advanced preparation for planning a successful trip or vacation, there are also many important items to consider at the conclusion of an outing. The presentation of content of Unit 8, Post-Trip Inspection, will enable you to identify the steps for securing a bus and performing a systematic post-trip inspection of a school bus. At the conclusion of this unit of instruction, you will understand that no student should be left on a school bus as a result of completing a systematic post-trip inspection. As you can see by looking at this picture, the most precious cargo we transport on our school buses is our students. We owe it to them to be the best drivers on the road. Therefore, during the presentation of this unit of instruction, we will identify and discuss the steps for securing a school bus at the completion of a route or trip and for performing a thorough post-trip inspection. Why is it important? Securing your bus at the end of a route or a trip and performing a complete post-trip inspection are important tasks for maintaining the life of a school bus, for keeping the driver and students safe at all times, and for protecting the driver and the school system from potential lawsuits. What do you think the driver of this school bus failed to do? The driver of this bus failed to set the parking brake and did not properly secure the bus at the completion of a trip. As you can see by viewing this picture, omitting one simple step for securing your bus at the end of a route trip can create a serious problem for you and your school system. At the completion of a route or your trip, always check your gauges to ensure that they are working properly and to determine if refueling is necessary. As a courtesy to your transportation supervisor and other drivers who may need to use your bus for a trip or routing, make sure you leave the tank at least 1/2 full of fuel. Set your parking brake and appropriately adjust the front wheels of your bus. When parallel parked next to a curb, turn your front wheels away from the curb when parking on level ground or on an upgrade. Turn them toward the curb when parking on a downgrade. When parking in a parking space parallel to other buses, leave your wheels straight. Always set the parking brake. Turn off all your fans and other ancillary items. While most equipment ceases to operate when the bus is off, don't assume that your headlights go off as well. They don't. Continuing with securing the bus. Turn off the ignition. Make sure that the ignition is in the off position. If the key is not truly off, it may result in equipment continuing to operate and drain the battery. Bleed the air brakes to 20 psi to ensure that the parking brake is set and cannot be released without the engine running. If the parking brake does not engage and hold the bus, contact fleet maintenance immediately. And then remove the keys from the ignition and store them in the appropriate location according to your transportation department guidelines. Now let's see what we have learned. Check your gauges, refuel as necessary, set your parking brake, and adjust your front wheels as necessary. Turn off all the ancillary equipment. Then turn off your ignition, bleed out remaining air pressure, and remove the keys from the ignition. Leaving a child behind is illegal. We have talked about securing the bus so that the vehicle will not roll away or drain the battery, but the driver still has more to do before clocking out and walking away. The primary reason for doing a post-trip inspection is to make sure no child is abandoned on the bus. Leaving a child on a bus is illegal, and may result in a driver being prosecuted for a Class 4 felony. Regardless of criminal prosecution, most school districts will immediately terminate a driver who parks a bus and abandons a student. For the post-trip inspection, walk the bus. Walk to the back of the bus to check for sleeping students. Check carefully under and on all seats. There is no excuse for leaving students on a bus. It is your responsibility to see that no student is left behind. School systems may install technologies designed to get drivers to inspect their buses, but drivers must commit themselves to making sure no student is left on the bus by developing the habit of walking to the back of the bus every time before opening the passenger door. Again, failing to check your bus may result in termination and perhaps even criminal prosecution. Check the inside of the bus for damage and for items that students may have left on the bus. Collect and store forgotten items so that they may be returned to students at a later time. Check for damage to seats, windows, and interior walls, report any damages, and clean as necessary. Sweep the floor and steps for the bus. Keeping your bus neat and clean is a nice courtesy to your students. If you make the effort to keep your bus clean, then your students may do the same. On the other hand, if you don't make an effort to keep the bus clean, you send a message that you do not care if the bus gets trashed. If you don't care, then why should they? Close all windows and hatches. In the event of inclement weather, this will protect your bus from water damage. Continuing with the post-trip inspection. Walk around the exterior of the bus to determine if there are any changes to the bus or at the parking location. Check for leaks under the bus, specifically for oil, antifreeze, and transmission fluid leaks. Report any mechanical problems as soon as possible through verbal and written reports. Now let's see what we've learned. What are the 7 components of a post-trip inspection? Walk the bus, check the inside of the bus, sweep the floor and steps, secure emergency door and windows. Check the exterior of the bus, check for leaks under the bus, report mechanical problems as soon as possible. What is the most important reason for conducting a post-trip inspection? To ensure no student is left behind on a bus. Now, before you leave, complete any written post-trip reports, clock out, and continue being safe. We want you to return for your next shift and be ready to drive so you can get students safely to school and ready to learn. In conclusion, let's review the important points for our instructional presentation. Always remember to secure the bus at the end of a route or trip. Conduct your systematic post-trip inspections. Exercise highway watch procedures. That includes walking your bus on the field trip before loading students and other passengers for the return trip. Never leave a student behind on the bus. Remembering to consistently complete these tasks will make your school bus a safe place for you and your students. How do we apply this training? Applying the principles that have been covered in this unit of instruction should make you a more conscientious bus driver. By always securing your bus at the end of every route or trip, by conducting daily systematic post-trip inspections, and by participating in in-system required bus driver evaluations, you will ensure that you and your students are safe and protected at all times. What is the measure of the performance standard? No student will ever be left behind on any school bus, and no bus shall roll from its park location as long as bus drivers are completing all of their necessary job requirements. Welcome to Unit 14 of the Georgia Department of Education mandating training units for school bus drivers. In this unit, we will cover the proper operation of a fire extinguisher. Our objective today is to improve your knowledge concerning the different types of fire extinguishers and how to properly use them. As the performance standard, the trainee shall be able to locate and operate a fire extinguisher and be familiar with the different types. As an overview, as we begin our overview, there are 3 different classifications of fires. These are listed as Class A, Class B, and Class C. Class A generally involves solid combustible materials such as paper, vinyl seat covers, and foam padding. Class B generally involves liquids such as diesel fuel or motor oil. and Class C generally involves an electrical fire. On the proper use of an extinguisher. If or when you discover a fire or material smoldering, please follow this sequence for the appropriate way to use a fire extinguisher. Remove the extinguisher from its bracket. Hold the extinguisher in an upright position. Stand 8 to 12 feet away from the flame. Pull the pin. Aim at the base of the fire. Squeeze the handle. Spray contents of an extinguisher at the base of the fire using a sweeping motion. Think of the acronym PASS, P-A-S-S, for pull, aim, squeeze, and sweep. Let's talk about servicing the fire extinguisher. The fire extinguisher will need to be serviced after each use. You should frequently check the gauge to ensure your fire extinguisher is properly charged, and an annual inspection and recharging is required for each fire extinguisher. Why is this important information? It provides the driver with knowledge on how to react in an emergency. It provides the driver with the opportunity to review prior knowledge and be ready just in case, and it demonstrates the proper use of a fire extinguisher. Review question. Name 3 classes of fires and provide a brief description of each. The answer: Class A generally involves solid combustible materials such as paper, vinyl, or foam. Class B generally involves liquid combustible materials such as diesel fuel or motor oil. And Class C generally involves electrical fires. Another question. List the items on your buses that fall into the 3 classes. Of course, we've talked about some of those, but with Class A, you've got paper, seat covers and cushions, and cell phone cases. Class B, there's diesel fuel and motor oil. In Class C, there's batteries, wires, and computer boards. The tablets and the cell phones that your students bring on the bus have both combustible materials as solid liquids, solid items, the phone cases themselves, and the batteries within those cell phones can be combustible as well. Some important facts to keep in mind. Fire extinguishers are filled with a dry chemical and are rated to extinguish all 3 classes of fires. When you check your gauge, ensure it is in the green, and if not, notify your fleet maintenance people. And remember to have your fire extinguisher serviced annually and after each use. Some important facts continued. If a fire occurs, follow these instructions. Remove the fire extinguisher from the bracket. Hold the fire extinguisher upright. Approach the fire upwind. That is to say, the smoke should be blowing away from you as you approach the fire. Pull the safety pin. Always aim at the base of the fire. Squeeze the handle and spray the chemical in a sweeping motion. Some questions. The fire extinguisher located on your bus is filled with, and the answer is a dry chemical that's going to be effective on Class A, B, and C fires. What is the purpose of the gauge located on the fire extinguisher? And the answer, of course, is to make sure that you know that it's properly charged. Before you approach a fire, you should remove the fire extinguisher from the bracket, hold the fire extinguisher upright, approach it from the upwind, pull the safety pin, aim at the base, squeeze the handle in a sweeping motion. Important facts to remember. Remembering the acronym PASS will assist you when or if you're ever faced with extinguishing a fire. When you approach a fire, you should aim between 8 and 12 feet from the fire. Remember, PASS equals pull, aim, squeeze, and sweep. Other important facts to keep in mind. Do not open the hood and do not walk through unburned materials. Do turn the extinguisher on and off. Do replace the safety pin when you're done, and do recharge or replace the extinguisher immediately after it has been used. As a summary, in summary, I am optimistic that you have learned some basic information from our presentation that will assist you if you ever face a fire situation on your bus. How can you apply this information? Knowing how to properly use a fire extinguisher can save lives and reduce property damage. However, you are a bus driver, not a firefighter. Evacuate the bus first. If you have any doubt about being able to safely fight the fire, get away from it and let it burn. Our measure of performance standard: you should be able to demonstrate how to check the fire extinguisher during a pre-trip inspection and explain how to properly use it. Again, thank you for your attentiveness during this module.